MMA is a sport filled from top to bottom with a wide range of personalities, and while sure, there are more stoic athletes to be found at each and every level, nothing sells quite like a brash, loudmouth, and all-around disrespectful superstar. So with that in mind, we've compiled a list of the top 10 most disrespectful fighters to have ever touched down in the UFC octagon. This is the most disrespectful fighters in UFC history. Number 10, Ben Askren. To kick things off, we're going to draw attention to one of the more recent star acquisitions by the UFC. Sure, Ben Askren's time in the top flight was something of a disaster, one that could have probably come a few years earlier in his fighting prime, but while it lasted, Askren did at least establish himself as one of the loudest voices in the promotion. When he wasn't going head-to-head with Dana on the mic, he was taking shots at every other fighter on the welterweight roster. Indeed, it did eventually result in him taking a flying knee from Jorge Masvidal, but even that couldn't keep Askren's spirits down. If one thing defined Askren's style of trash-talking, it was his God-given ability to find his way under his target's skin. A sharp talker of that, there is no doubt, but above all other things, Ben's ability to really make his rivals hate him was one of the main things that summed up his time as a UFC fighter. Number 9, Jon Jones. The general public have slowly come around to the real persona of the legendary Jon Jones after early criticism that saw many people calling him fake. But no, the real Jon Jones is a shrewd operator, in equal parts cutting and witty while also having a ruthlessly cold side. Who can forget the more heated moments in his rivalry with Daniel Cormier? Moments that showed an aspect of Jon's character that seemed far removed from his usual on-screen presence. Jones could well be the single greatest fighter in the history of the UFC, but there's a certain level of meanness to him that makes him an easy pick for this list. Whether he will be as confident trash-talking hulking specimens like Francis Ngannou or Stipe Miocic remains to be seen, but if Jon doesn't see you as a threat, he will make you feel like you're totally worthless. The man clearly believes in his own greatness, and as a result, he brings a unique level of disrespectfulness to the mic with him. Number 8, Quinton Rampage Jackson. When Quinton Rampage Jackson was at the peak of his powers, there were few fighters who could command the attention of a room like him. And don't get us wrong, Rampage was funny as hell, but even in his lighthearted moments, he would always seem as though he would say or do something at the drop of a hat. As confident as they come, Jackson never thought twice about insulting his fellow fighters or even his friends. His memorable coaching stint on The Ultimate Fighter saw him do everything from antagonize the show's cast to completely destroy a wooden door in a fit of rage. And though the comparatively more chilled out Rashad Evans was the more perfect counterpart to Rampage's volatility, there was no question about the fact that Jackson was the one who made that season what it was. He might be considerably more laid back these days, but when Rampage Jackson was on form, he was as entertaining as any fighter in the game. Number 7, Jorge Masvidal. Jorge Masvidal's status as one of the UFC's biggest stars was a career in the making. Upon returning from a year or two hiatus with a fresh look and improved fighting style, Masvidal was able to make good on a lifetime's worth of potential on a run that saw him defeat Darren Till, Ben Askren, and Nate Diaz back-to-back. And though his rivalries with Till and Diaz were mainly competitive, his showdown with Askren saw him score one of the most frankly disrespectful knockouts in UFC history. That vicious finish and then its aftermath alone would have been enough to secure him a spot on this list, but then you factor in his backstage altercation with Leon Edwards and many other highlights from his ongoing resurrection, it's easy to understand why Masvidal has well and truly won the fans over. With the second shot at Kamaru Usman and a welterweight title now in front of him, only time will tell how far Jorge can go, but if one thing's for sure, it's that it certainly pays to be brash. Number 6, Nate Diaz. Up next, we have one of the UFC's most popular fighters of all time, a man who in some ways stands as their anti-establishment poster boy. Nate Diaz, like Masvidal before him, only truly captured a huge level of fame and success in his later years, but when he finally got it, it did little to change his infectious personality. Nate is actually quite a kind and respectful guy if you approach him the right way, but like his brother Nick, he has quite another side to him, a line that could easily be crossed. To put it simply, Nate will disrespect you if you disrespect him, and through his memorable rivalries with guys like Conor McGregor, Donald Cerrone, and Rafael dos Anjos, we get to see a side of Nate that's not always apparent when he's in a good mood. If one thing has endeared Nate to the masses over the years, it's his unwillingness to compromise who he is. And though he doesn't always come away with a victory, he lives his life by a constant code. Just make sure you don't get on his bad side. Number 5, Nick Diaz. How can we mention Nate without drawing attention to his brother, the former Strikeforce champion Nick Diaz? Though Nate has always been the one receiving the bulk of the attention in recent years, Nick was originally billed as MMA's bad boy, and it's easy to see why. Nick's trash talk was built entirely around the notion of dishing out hostility to whoever it was that signed on the dotted line to fight him. Where Nate responds more to what you give him, if you were fighting Nick Diaz, you would have made yourself a new enemy. Memorable rivalries with the likes of George St. Pierre and Anderson Silva showcased Diaz at the height of his powers, openly mocking these all-time greats in a way that only he could. And who else could ever pull off lying down inside the octagon mid-fight like Nick, a legend of the sport and another guy who just knew exactly how to get under any fighter's skin? Number 4. Chael Sonnen. Chael Sonnen delivers trash talk with the type of wink and nudge confidence that just makes him an instant hit with the fans. Above all other things, it's Chael's commitment to his gimmick that makes him who he is, and while sure, he can't always find the way to make his performances inside the cage live up to his persona, to say that Sonnen is consistent would be the understatement of the century. Undefeated in his own mind, some of Chael's highlights include his relentless taunting of the legendary middleweight champion Anderson Silva, his drawn-out rivalry with Wanderlei Silva, and of course, any moment involving his absolutely schooling of the comparatively less sharp-tongued Tito Ortiz. Chael is a man who is made to be heard by the masses, and he certainly doesn't care if he hurts the feelings of his fellow fighters in the process. One of MMA's all-time greatest trash talkers, of that there is no question. Number 3. Conor McGregor. Conor McGregor brings a little bit of everything to the table. He can be silly, mean, cutting, and cruel in equal measure, and though he now finds himself at something of a crossroads in his career, his mic skills are nothing short of legendary. Whether he was knocking down Jose Aldo a peg or two ahead of their featherweight title matchup or completely stepping over the line with the lightweight king Khabib Nurmagomedov, Conor McGregor is unapologetically committed to getting inside his opponent's head. And if he has to get a little disrespectful to get the job done, then so be it. And while he's been incredibly friendly to his last two opponents, Dustin Poirier and Donald Cerrone, there's still every chance we'll get to see a more mean and abrasive McGregor return before too long. As far as verbal warfare goes within the sport of MMA, there's simply no equal to Conor McGregor, and for our money, it'll be a long time before anyone comes close to equaling him. Number 2. Josh Koscheck. Coming out of that legendary first season of The Ultimate Fighter and into the UFC, there's no type of attitude that made him an instant hit as a heel figure. And Koscheck knew what he was doing, make no mistake. He possessed a knack for playing into a role, riling up his opponents through his presence in the room alone. And if you want to talk disrespectful moments, how about his fake out against Paul Daly, where he feigned an injury after an illegal knee that completely missed him, costing Daly a point and eventually his UFC career after the British powerhouse attempted to attack him post-fight. Koscheck is a memorable figure within the MMA world for filling that role perfectly, but all in all, he does come across as a massive douche. Number 1. Colby Covington. And finally, we come to Chaos himself, Colby Covington, a man who is committed to his gimmick like no other fighter before him. Loudmouthed, abrasive, and downright offensive at every turn, Colby is a master at angering the masses, bringing everything from political affiliations to Marvel and movie spoilers into his arsenal in order to alienate as many people as possible. Controversy sells, and if it takes telling a full crowd of Brazilian fans that their homeland is a dump just to get it done, well, that's the price of fame. For Covington, his disrespectful highlights are too numerous to count, but all in all, there's no doubt that our minds over his position as the single most disrespectful fighter in MMA history. And that will just about do it for this video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to leave a like before subscribing to the channel so you can stay up to date with all of our latest uploads. Thanks for watching.